Okay.
Better? Okay, man. Broadcast live in the basement of Ferguson across the YouTube nation to talk to the PSU, Penn State Ag student teachers from 2015. They've been learning about assessment, and they've been kind of trying to figure out this standards-based assessment thing. I thought you'd share some about your experiences and your aquaculture tank. Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in my lab. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, great.
Okay. I'm in my lab, so if the water noise in the background gets. Well, hey, I'm excited to be here and talk to you a little bit. First off, I have no answers, so I hope he didn't tell you that I had all the answers, because I don't. And the only thing I think I could really share is just some experience of trying to implement standards-based grading, some of the trials and tribulations, I guess, of doing that, and maybe just to tweak a little bit on maybe a grading philosophy that you might think about as you move forward. So long story short is about 3 years ago, probably, maybe 4, I started really kind of reading a lot and trying to get my head wrapped around kind of the standards-based grading concept. Some background, my wife is an administrator, so not in my school, but in a different school. And so, of course, across the dinner table, we have a lot of educational discussions, many of which I lose. And so the neat thing is that, you know, her school is already kind of in the process of going to a standards-based grading system. They've had multitudes of different committee work and so on and so forth, and they're probably within about a year of implementing it. And it's been about a 5-year process for them. So it really got me started thinking, and I always kind of knew there was something wrong with the grading system I was using. Just number of points, you total up the number of points, you divide by the number of total possible points, and voila, there you go. That's your percentage, kid, and that's what you get. And for the most part, that's I don't want to say, I guess I don't know that that's necessarily best practice. And, you know, I mean, I've done all the things that used to be done to me of, you know, if you're 2 days late, then that's 20% off your grade, and I'll flog you publicly later. You know, I mean, it's kind of a thing of what are we really trying to get after when we're trying to grade? And I've told my kids that grading is a byproduct of what we do here. Grading should be a reflection of the learning, not the reason for coming to school. We shouldn't be coming to school to chase grades. If you're coming here because you want to get an A, I guess that's all well and good, but I'd rather be interested in what you learned. And I guess, you know, to go back even farther a little bit, you know, I remember coming home as a senior and handing my dad my report card, and, you know, he goes, here's my report card, and he's like, oh, did you learn anything? I said, well, yeah, I got all A's. And he's like, no, I know you can get all A's. I asked if you learned anything. And there's quite a bit of difference there that I didn't realize what he was getting at the time. You know, it's kind of one of those things when you're 18, your old man doesn't know anything, and when you're 22, he knows everything, and you were surprised how much he learned in 4 years. Yeah, so it's tried and true joke, but it is true, and one of the things I think I've thanked him for is that, you know, really starting to think about what it is that we're learning and why it is we're trying to do what we do in the classroom. And again, I think if you focus on learning, a lot of the anxiety that kids have, a lot of the trials and tribulations are based off of grades. I'm not getting the grade I want. I'm not, you know, nobody asked me, Mr. Eddy, I just didn't understand that concept. Can I have more time to work on it? No, they just want to know, what do I got to do to get an A? What do I got to do to get a B? And you know, I'm trying to shift that focus away from that process, but back into more of a what are we trying to learn here, and that's what I want to assess, and use my grades as a true communication tool of this is where a kid is, here's what they've learned, not, you know, again, they can hand it in on time and they can copy off their friends 5 minutes in front of class. So again, you know, the thing about my curriculum is I've been teaching case since 2009, and that's kind of led me down this road as well, because case is a conceptually based curriculum where you're dealing more with what are the concepts, what are the big overarching things that the kids need to learn, and what it is that are we going to do to help them learn it. And so you are able to I think, more mold yourself into this standards-based grading system quite a bit. And I think the thing that you have to realize, you have to disconnect your thinking of what is an A versus what did the kid learn. And as I start through this, I'm using kind of a standards. A 4 means that the kid was above and beyond the standard. Whatever the standard was that we did, the kid went above and beyond. They're able to do it. They have full mastery of it. They can take it to another situation and apply it. They have, again, full mastery of that concept. A number 3 would mean that they met the standard. In other words, they can do the concept, or they understand the concept that we're talking about. 2 would mean that they're just beginning their learning process. They don't quite have it yet. Okay, and a 2 usually means that they have to circle back around and come back to me with, here's what I've done, and demonstrate to me that I have learned that concept. Okay, and that there really isn't a time frame for that, but yet they need to come back and circle around. And I'm still playing with how that looks managerially in a classroom. And again, because again, at the end of the semester, I have to put out a grade. As a matter of fact, I have to put out a grade 4 times a semester, but the last one is the one that counts. And so I still have to have a grade at the end of the semester. So by then you need to circle around and have shown me that, hey, that concept I didn't get earlier, now I understand it. Because again, I don't think a kid walks into a classroom and you can read off their forehead, hey, I'm going to get it in one day. I'm going to get this today. I'll get this tomorrow. I won't understand this for a month. We don't know, and every kid's different. And so again, and then the bottom of that scale is a 1, which means that I have no evidence to grade. The kid hasn't done anything to show me that they understand the concept, or at least show me that they're even starting to understand the concept. So usually that's reserved for a kid that was either gone or absolutely did nothing. And so again, and then the question becomes, well, Mr. Eddy, is a 4 and A. Well, that's kind of where I'm living in 2 worlds. I'm living in the world where, and by the way, my school is not doing this. We're not researching it. We're not heading towards it. I'm totally off the reservation here. And my principal is good with that. He's fine with what I'm doing. And I think he kind of likes what I'm doing. But I still have to bring it back to an A, B, C, D at the end of the day, because, again, that's what kids have to have on the report card at Southeast Polk. And so making that conversion is, again, the problem with standards-based grading. A 4 is not an A, a 3 is not a B, a 2 is not a C. But for lack of a better term, that's kind of what I'm ended up doing. Really, at some point in the future, we would ended up at a standards-based report card. The report card for my class should be a list of things that says, okay, number 1, the kid can do this. Yep, he can do that at a 3 level. He mastered, or he's competent there. The next one, maybe he gets a 4 at because he's mastered that one. My biotechnology class, the kids were pouring auger plates. Well, a number 3 is you successfully poured an auger plate, and you can repeat that over and over and over. A number 4 is you understand an auger plate, and you can not only pour an LB auger plate, you can pour a regular auger plate, you can pour a yeast auger plate. You can apply that concept across multitudes of systems. And so again, what does that look like as a grade? And that's where I struggle a lot trying to convert that system, because it really shouldn't be mixed, I guess. It's 2 different strains of thinking, I guess. So again, at the end of the day, the kids end up with an A, B, C. Typically what the principal and I kind of agreed upon is that if they have 80% or better 4s, then that maybe looks like an A. If there's 50% 4s, then maybe that's an A minus. If there's a 30% that and the rest are 3s, and maybe that's a B plus-ish kind of thing. And so again, that's the world I'm living in. And I think if colleges start accepting more of a standards-based transcript, I think you'll see schools go to this lock, stock, and barrel. And again, it's a tough thing to do, because parents are verklempt. Kids actually are the easiest ones to mold into a different system. They're like, oh, okay. And for the most part, my kids are pretty flexible just because I've done case and they're kind of used to me doing a lot of new things and just saying, hey, we're going to try this and see how it goes. Don't worry so much about the concept. What's that? Yeah, yep. And so, again, as we look at that, sorry, my CT director's covering my classes today, and she didn't know what to do. So it's a tough world we live in, kids. It's a tough world. So again, as I look at that, my kids are kind of used to it, so they pretty much jumped into it right away. And actually, a lot of them were like, yeah, I think that's great, because here's the thing. I don't ever count off for late work. There is no late work in my class. It's just you haven't learned it yet. Demonstrate to me that you've learned it. And I'm willing to accept a multitude of ways. Show it to me in interpretive dance for all I care, but show me that you've learned the concept. Nobody's ever taken me up on that either. But again, there's no late work. I don't penalize kids for missing assignments. I don't give them a 0. If I've known for a long time in the back of my head, I've always been able to manipulate a 0 to 100 scale 7 ways from Sunday. As a matter of fact, I had a parent that took her kid out of my class. It's a good kid, nice kid, not her fault. Her parent was concerned about her GPA. And told me that flat out. Will this affect my kid's GPA? And I'm like, look, I'm not out to get anybody doing this. I'm not going to screw your kid over because they got an A- instead of an A+, and we have an A+ system here, so just roll with it. And so they were worried about her GPA, and so she takes her kid out of my animal science class. What is the kid's career interest? Veterinarian. Wow. And not only that, but the kid, I don't think the kid really cared. The mom cared about her GPA. She has to have a 4.25 GPA. The thing about it is, never once in those conversations during parent-teacher conferences, and this was not this year, last year, no parent that had a problem with it ever said anything about what is my kid learning in this class. Did my kid learn in this class? They asked, what's my kid's grade? What does my kid have to do to get an A? Why is he or she not getting an A? Those were the questions I answered. Not what are they learning. What did they learn? Actually, this year I had a new parent, freshman kid. It was very refreshing. They said, what does my daughter do not so well? What can my daughter do better? What are her strengths? What are her weaknesses that you see? Not what's my kid's grade. So that was kind of a refreshing conference. So again, you're going to face a lot if you think you want to get into this. Dr. Foster showed you some great links, YouTube videos. Rick Wormley I'd probably pronounce it wrong. Is probably, when I first started watching some of his stuff on YouTube, just blew my hair completely sideways, because it was almost like the epiphany that I knew I was looking for, but I didn't know what I was looking for, and made me realize again, what are we doing? There's over 60%, 59% of the grading scale is AV. And has a kid, and a kid's never come to me in 16 years and said, gee, Mr. A, you gave me a 0 on that assignment. I feel really bad about that. Can I try it again? Or, I've learned my lesson this time. I won't turn it in a week late. I apologize. Never. They don't care. The kids will gravitate to whatever grade the comfort level is at. And if somebody's not holding their feet to the fire, they'll get a C, and if nobody cares, then that's good enough for them. And there are very few that are intrinsically motivated. Some have their parents that are motivating, which is okay, but that's, they will, again, gravitate to whatever level of comfort or least resistance they have. And none of that focuses on what did I learn. It just focuses on what do I got to do so that you'll leave me alone, so that my parents will leave me alone, and I have to do the least amount of work. Because all it really was copying words into a worksheet anyway, and I got that from the cafeteria 20 minutes before school started today. You don't think it's happening? Walk down there and take a look. Everybody's swapping share. I had the last principal I had here. That was one of his things. He's like, if you guys really think that they're learning anything with that, you're sorely mistaken. They're just doing it to get it done and hand it in so that they don't have to do it again. And again, that doesn't sit well with me as an educator. That again, I'm letting them off the hook. They took an F, smiled all the way down the hallway because they didn't have to do a darn thing, and I'm not good with that. Again, you'll have a lot of kids that say, F, great, that's a great trade. I didn't do a dang thing. What's next? So, again, I don't know that I have any answers. I'd be more than happy to answer questions. What do you guys want to learn?
I think we have time for 2 questions. And so does anybody want to ask a question now? I know that the main purpose of this is for you to get to meet Matt. Matt, you going to be in Louisville next week?
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe if you see any kids walking around with Southeast Polk on the back of the jacket, is that what's on the back of your jacket?
Yep, Southeast Polk. Definitely harass them a little bit. I tell them, I said, here's the thing, kids. I said, I apologize, but everybody knows me. And I said, so if you're doing wrong, they're going to tell me. I said, if you're doing right, they're going to tell me, and I'm going to love you for it. So do right. So, yes, harass them.
And maybe you never know when you're going to cross paths with someone. So I wanted you to meet Matt. I wanted you to follow him on Twitter. I want you to ask questions on Twitter to him. I also want you to have his email because he's one of those guys that's not afraid to think big. And I'm going to say with him on the line, because I told y'all some other things, the best thing about Matt Eddy as an ag educator, if I could have like one piece as we make you into superhuman ag teachers and take from all these people you meet, Matt evidences and lives a growth mindset. He's not scared to try something new and maybe fail, but it might be cool, and what can we learn? And so that's the one piece I'd like to take and insert into all of us as we go forward. Do we have time for one question, or are you right now, you're just like, I don't have the words for a question? Toby.
So you were talking about like some of the differences between this model with the standardized assessments versus like the old style grading. How, because I feel like a lot of parents probably think of the old style grading as an implement of, oh, well, if my student has a good grade, then that's what then they learned that. How do we kind of change that mindset? Like what are some tools that we can use to help change the mindset for parents of students that we're going to have if this is especially going to be a growing concept?
Yeah. Well, and the thing about standards-based grading does not have to do with really testing per se. It's just saying, okay, again, the lab that we did, the kids were pouring agar plates. The concept was that they need to be able to understand how to pour an agar plate successfully. That's the concept that you're evaluating. I really don't do a lot of paper and pencil ABCD test type things. So that kind of think about that, and I think I know where you're going with that, but just some vernacular changes there. So again, what are some things we can do? Help them understand. Don't give zeros. If you're in the other system, don't give zeros. And make the kid do the work. Make them demonstrate knowledge to you. Give them redos. All of you will take praxis tests, probably, that sort of thing, right? You get to take that till you pass it, right? Then you fail the first time, and then the second time, the old joke comes to mind, what's the guy that graduates last from his class in medical school? Doctor, right? So, now, granted, I don't know that I necessarily want the guy that's last in his class, but you know what? That doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad doctor, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of standards things that we have in our world that you can look at and say, you know what, it's okay for a kid to fail a couple of times if they come back and learn from that. And we've had, unfortunately, a lot of tragedy at our school in my tenure here in the last 10, 11 years. And part of my rationalization, or at least what I think in my head, is that kids today are very hard on themselves when it comes to grades. And they think a failure or an F or a doing bad is the end of the world. And maybe it seems like it for them. But they need to understand that failure is not fatal. Failure is not the problem. Not learning from failure is a problem, but failure is not the problem. And I think we've done that with our regular grading system. We've perpetuated that if you get an F, you're horrible, you're a terrible person, you're never going to amount to anything, and you suck. And because again, if you get a 10%, that's a super F. That's 50% from passing even, and you're not even getting to the fact of the stigma of having just a D. So again, you use a lot of standards-based grading practices that you can put into place without actually doing a standards-based grading system. That, again, if you look, some of the things Rick talks about is, again, what that 100 to 0 scale is just not really ever meant to be a good mathematical representation of what a kid learns, and yet we use it as that because teachers assess things like timeliness, they assess things like completeness, they give extra credit, which skews the percentages. Like I said, the one mom that took her kid out of the class, she thought I was going to just manipulate her grade all over the place, and I didn't want to tell her, but my head was talking back going, lady, I could manipulate the other system 7 ways from Sunday and you'd never know the difference. I said, I could make that grade whatever I want. I've been doing this long enough, and I'm reasonably good at math that I can do whatever I want and make a kid's grade jump wherever I want to go. And a lot of it is poor practice. And mostly I just didn't know better. Some of it was I was just doing what everybody, that's the way I went to school. That's the way we did it. Nobody ever talked about grading. I'm so impressed with you guys actually having these discussions, because kids come out to student teach with me and I say, hey, what do you think about standards-based grading? And they look at me like I grew a second head. And I say, what do you think about the 100 to 0 system and whatever? And they have never had a discussion about grading and why we do what we do. How are we assessing kids, and how are we assessing their learning, not the other things that go along with schooling? And there are two different things there.
Hey, man, I really appreciate your time, and you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you next week.
Hey, absolutely. I look forward to seeing you.